Right, I'm joined this morning by Stevie, who is a local, I would call her a historian actually, because she's got such great local knowledge. We met about a week ago just by happenstance really, and we got chatting about Tiverton's history, particularly its industrial history, and it is an amazing town, and brought up to date by last week's information that Heathcotes were involved in the moon rover parachute, which is quite amazing. But we're going to dig back into a little bit more of its history this morning, so I'm glad to have Stevie with me. And the first little gem that we're going to look at is old Blundell's school, and it kind of, you could almost, it kind of jumps right off the pages of Harry Potter, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It was built in the early 1600s for the poor children of Tiverton. That was the criteria.
Yeah.
You had to live in Tiverton.
Yeah.
And it was early schooling, which was very adventurous for Tiverton. And it's a lovely building. I have been in it, I have to say, because I'm a volunteer at Nighthaze.
Okay. And it's now owned by the National Trust, isn't it?
Now owned by the National Trust.
Yeah.
And in front of us, if you look to the right,
Yep.
of the doorway,
Yep.
that is the school master's residence.
Oh, just to the right there.
Yes.
I'll see if I can zoom in on that. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
And the rest of the building was the school.
Now, they didn't board here, did they? Or was it they were day students?
They were day students,
Yeah.
in the main, because they were local children, and that was the criteria. They
Yeah.
had to be local.
And Blundell himself made his fortune in cloth, didn't he?
Absolutely.
And he kind of brought his wealth back to Tiverton, which is
Yes.
really nice, isn't it?
Yes. And it was the school until the 1800s,
Yeah.
when they moved to the present site.
Okay. Okay.
I would like to show you something on the wall.
Okay.
It's a beautiful building, and it's got a lovely clock tower.
Yes, it has.
Which I've been up to,
Have you?
because they re-leaded it. And National Trust volunteers were invited up there. So
And is it used for anything at all, Stevie? Or
it's private
it's
flats
it's
now.
private flats now. Wow, what a place to live.
If
Okay.
you, I don't know whether you can actually see, there's lots of signatures here of old students, which shows they carved their names even in those days.
So they did a bit of early graffiti, you could say. Oh yeah. Wow. The one at the top there did a very nice job.
Absolutely.
Very, very nice. A very articulate person. He
Yes.
went on to be an architect, I should think.
Yes, and yet you can see some by the people themselves, by
Yeah.
the writing, but they're beautifully done.
They are. Do you know, would not have known these were here, would you? Unless
No.
you've got the knowledge. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
And in front of the school, it was called the ironing board,
The ironing board.
where discipline was administered.
Oh my goodness. Oh, six of the best, eh? Wow.
They would have been firm but fair.
Yeah. And I presume there was a some sort of statue
Up.
in that recessed
Yes.
area at some
I
point.
would
Yeah.
have thought so,
Yeah.
because there's two doorways, two beautiful doorways.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and beautiful stone.
Oh, the stone's
But it
fantastic.
must be quite soft stone to carve
To
the
be able to
names
carve
in.
names in it, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, on we go then, shall we?
Yes.
That's Old Blundell's school.
You can imagine them walking up.
You
here.
can, can't you? You can, and you know, being a resident of Tiverton, you know, most of us walk past this and don't give it a look, do we?
No.
And yet it's
No.
just a wonderful building. one of many in Tiverton that kind of either we don't notice or they're tucked away.
Yes, and that's the trouble in a way, because we rush past in our cars.
We do.
And we don't stop and stare.
We don't. We don't, and that's the thing about this country, isn't it? There's so much history and heritage, literally, you know, under our noses, so to speak.
This building in front of you is the caretakers originally.
Okay.
Of course, because the gates would have been shut.
Yes, of course.
Night.
Yes, of course.
And then you go out into the road.
Okay, and here we are in the town itself. Next thing we're going to look at is, very briefly, is this lovely clock tower. It looks as though it's been restored in recent years. And it's officially on Lowman Green, is that right? And
Lowman Green.
we get this reference to Lowman a lot because it's the Lowman River, which was the river that feeds into the Exe, isn't it? And where we get the name Tiverton from, to Ford Ton.
To Ford Town.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful monument.
It is, and I've got in my notes it says it was built in 1907 in grey limestone. Of course, lime kilns and limestone's very prolific in our area, and it was carved with figures of faith, hope and peace, so you can figure out which is faith and which is hope and which is peace.
We'll leave that to you.
We'll leave that to me, yeah. And it was presented to the town. Oh, it's chiming. Wow, it's got a nice chime, isn't it?
I won't comment on that.
It was presented by to the town by someone called Thomas Clark, who was a Justice of the Peace and a local kind of businessman. Is that right? Right. Now we're going to have a quick look at what the first of many of the panels. And Stevie's going to just point out a few features.
Well, it says here, Peter Blundell.
Peter Blundell.
Made a fortune buying cloth in Tiverton and selling it in London.
Selling it in London.
Yes. Where Devon Kersey's, the cloth was manufactured here was called Kersey.
Kersey.
And it wasn't popular to start with, but later on it became quite fashionable, and you had to be a man of standing to wear the full Kersey outfit.
Okay.
He never married, going back to Blundell.
He never married.
But his generosity to friends and good causes. His name was given to the free, you have to remember, the school was free.
Yes.
Grammar school.
Free grammar school.
1604.
1604, wow.
For 150 boys.
150 boys, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a very expensive building as well. And it talks about the Lowman Bridge, which we are coming
We're here,
to.
yes.
Was rebuilt in 1612 because the Tiverton suffered very badly from fires.
Fires.
Because of the thatch roofs.
The factories and the wooden homes, I presume.
That's right.
And they heated their home with wood and coal.
They stopped houses having thatched roofs in the early 1700s.
Did they? Okay.
It explains here what we've just said of the to Ford Town, so it's a very interesting
panel.
And it shows you where you are here.
That's the trail we're going to go. Okay, so we'll head on up to, and this is the Lowman River on our left here.
With the ford, it was obviously a ford.
Yes.
At one time.
Yes.
And you can see the house is built up.
Yes.
Because of the water would have been far higher here.
Yes, and the original level would have been down this level here, wouldn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I see. Yeah, yeah.
Beautiful house.
It is a lovely house.
But it had to be built up because of
To
the war.
to protect against the flooding. Oh, we mustn't forget Edward the Peacemaker. Now, my notes tell me that he was. This was built in 1902, and it commemorates the life of King Edward VII. He was the eldest son of Queen Victoria, and so he was related to the royalty through Europe, and he was the Prince of Wales for many years.
Oh yes.
And the reason why he's called the Peacemaker, I found, is that he forged good relationships with European countries during his time, and he was labelled the Peacemaker.
Ah,
Isn't that interesting?
that's interesting.
So there he is. He could do with a bit of a clean, I think.
He's cleaned regularly.
He's cleaned regularly, is he? Okay.
It's the tree which
Yeah, it's the
causes
tree.
Beautiful trees, but
So that's Edward VII, Queen Victoria's eldest nephew. On we go. So we're now walking up Gold Street. Now you have something to say about gold and silver, don't you, Stevie?
yes, any town that has either Silver Street or Gold Street, or both in this instance in Tiverton, means it was rich in the merchants' time,
In-
the cloth industry,
Right.
and they gave their wealth in part to the town that they prospered in.
Well, that's certainly true of Tiverton, isn't it? When we get to the almshouses in particular,
Yes.
and we're coming up to a particularly important building in that regard, just a bit further up on the left.
It was the first of the merchants who gave to the town by the almshouse.
We should explain that alms these were homes given to poor people who'd served the community, and they were allowed to live there without any cost. Is that right?
But it was only
Or
men.
it was only men?
Only men.
Oh, really?
All men.
Oh dear.
But they forgot about the women.
I'm gonna.
Built in 15, 16, 17.
Let's go across the other side of the road.
All these buildings usually have a chapel attached,
Yes,
which is interesting, down the steps.
down the steps. Why down the steps?
Well, because places were lower then.
Yes, of course, I guess. And
It's been inhabited since then. It's a beautiful building, absolutely beautiful.
John Greenway was a wool merchant himself, wasn't he,
He was
Stevie?
a wool merchant
Yeah.
himself, and he was a very prosperous man, because he initially sent the cloth, the kersey, down to Topsham and places like that to
Did
go
he?
over to the continent, but he actually was admitted to the guild, and that was important, and then he could trade out of London, and then he realised if he had his own ships, he could save himself money, and on the chapel,
So we have the chapel here. What a wonderful doorway entrance, and
the doorway,
also the inscriptions up there are interesting, aren't they? If you can tap in on those. What
every
is it?
merchant,
Have grace
yes,
of men and
ever
save their soul, is it? Ever save their soul,
pray for
Pray for their soul.
Pray for the soul.
Pray for their soul. That's John Greenway.
Greenway.
Yeah, fantastic, isn't it? And then we've got the little bell tower up there.
And you can see his initials.
See his initials,
and he would have had a seal.
He would have had a seal.
And if anybody's interested, they're housed in the Tiverton Museum.
They're in the Tiverton Museum. Now, I'm going to pop across because underneath the arch of the door, there's a statue, isn't there?
Yes.
Let's just have a quick look at that, if we can. This is a busy part of town. So underneath here we've got a statue. Unbelievable.
When you think how old it is.
Absolutely. There it is. And
but the inmates in the almshouses were encouraged, well, they had to go into the chapel to pray several times a day for their benefactor.
Did
and
they?
Say prayers for their benefactor who was long gone.
Wow, so they didn't get their free accommodation without a price to pay, right? Wow. Okay, shall we move on then? We're moving up then to. So we're carrying on up Gold Street. This is kind of the commercial hub of Tiverton.
If you look above the shops, you can see many older buildings.
Yes, that have had their facades changed.
Remember, when you go anywhere to a town,
always look up.
Always look up.
Yes.
Because it's so interesting.
It is. It's so interesting, as you say. Yeah, 1916, that one. Yeah. So we're heading towards the Memorial Hall. There's Gold Street, yes.
Building to our right.
Do you know, it's funny how banks always seem to get the best buildings in town, don't they?
Well,
I wonder what that's all about.
Yes.
Now we're going to do something that I hadn't warned Stevie about, because I've been coming and doing walks in the town now since we were locked down, and I've got into a bit of a habit of feeding the local pigeons.
Oh, yeah.
And they usually hang out above Barclays Bank on the roof there, and I often give them a little bit of seed, and
but as long as you give them seed and not bread.
Exactly, yeah. So we're going to do that, see if we can get them down. Here they are. Now then. Yeah, there's a few here. So when these start to see that there's some seed around, I think we'll probably get a mass amount coming down, yeah. Here they are. And some of them have got some beautiful colours, actually.
Absolutely. Look at the brown one.
Yeah.
And the white one.
Yeah, they're absolutely gorgeous, aren't they?
They're not. When you think of pigeons and what they did in the wars, especially the First World War, carrying...
They were vital, weren't they? Absolutely vital.
Got the VC, didn't it?
One pigeon got a VC.
Mm-hmm.
Flying through flak and
absolutely.
bullets and goodness knows what else.
Coming back to base, how did they know?
Unbelievable. I'm convinced they come down just to see me, that they'd come to see me anyway, even though I didn't have any birdseed. Do you think that's right, Steve?
No,
No?
I don't think they would come down if you didn't throw food for them.
I love this brown one.
Yes. He's obviously attention seeking because it's putting his wings up.
Definitely.
They're not shy.
Now, only good nutrition for these birds. No stale white bread.
No. And it only encourages rats.
Indeed. Right, we'll move on. I haven't fed the pigeons. Now, I didn't see. We have another panel here. We can probably. Right. So Stevie's going to just take us through this panel for a minute.
Again, if we go down this road,
Yep.
you'll see one of the merchants' building.
Yes.
It was altered after the Great Fire in 1731, and the brickwork is exceptional.
Okay.
In a style unusual to Devon.
Is it? Yeah.
It's now the solicitors.
Okay. We'll see that on the way down.
Yes, we'll see that on there. There's a famous midwife in
Yes.
the graveyard in St George's
Okay.
Church, which is a beautiful building
Okay.
and one of quite rare when it was built. And it says she delivered some 5,000 babies
Wow.
between
Wow.
1698
Yes.
and 1733.
Wow. Busy lady.
Busy lady, busy population.
Busy population.
Wall Street was the main street in Georgian times.
Okay. Okay. All right.
So again, look for these signs.
Yes.
Because they're a wealth of information.
A lot of effort's been made by the town to really highlight the history of the town.
Absolutely.
We'll go. So we're heading now towards the memorial building. And it's quite grand, isn't it? It's got an absolutely
It's grand
imposing frontage.
yes, it was the land was given by the Amerys,
Yes.
who were Heathcote Amery, but John took over Amery rather than Heathcote, or Heathcote as they say.
Hathcote. Yeah.
Locally, and has connections with Palmerston. Beautiful building.
It is, isn't it?
If you get the chance after the lockdown.
Was it used as a town hall for many years?
It is the town.
It still is. Okay.
Council meetings. And
Yeah.
things
Even though we've got a new council
Yes.
offices, yeah.
still used and used by the museum
Yeah.
for their annual general
Yeah.
meetings. And if you just step inside when the doors are open, you can see the grand hallway and the staircase.
And it almost looks like this building here is separate from it, but is it part of it?
It's
Or
separate.
is it separate? Let's have a walk down that side,
Yes.
shall we?
But this. St George's Church is a very unusual church for the time it was built. It was built in the 1700s and not many churches were built then. So it's almost Regency.
It is, isn't it? It's a huge building, and again, you've got that lovely coloured stone, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful when you go down St Andrew Street, which is there, and you look back on the town hall and the beautiful church.
Tiverton's got a lot of churches, isn't it?
Yes.
12 or 13, I think, the last time I checked.
St George's isn't used very much as a church now.
No.
But they sometimes have concerts in it.
We'll just pop across the road here to get the look of this building, because it's really quite lovely as well, particularly the entrance. Oh, look at that.
We're now on Angel Hill.
This is Angel Hill.
It's called locally Angina Hill.
Yeah, I can
You
see
may
why.
laugh, but
Can see why,
when you
yeah.
walk up it, it's a beautiful building again.
Isn't it? Isn't it?
And just attached to the town
It's attached,
hall.
yeah. It's kind of odd because the stone obviously completely different, and you'd think they were two separate buildings, but they are actually attached.
Well, I don't know whether you can go through or not,
No.
but that's something the visitor can find out.
Find out,
can't
yeah.
they? And look at the lovely chimneys
They are, aren't
on
they?
the top
Yeah.
of the building.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed those.
And
of
a
course,
memorial to the First World War.
First
above the
World
door.
War. And the lovely leaden windows, yeah.
Used by the British Legion until
Yes.
quite recently.
Okay.
And on the Remembrance Sunday, they have a parade here.
Parade here,
And
yeah.
they
Put the wreaths along there, okay. Right, we're going to scoot around the corner here now, and because there's two wonderful buildings around here as well. And this lampstand is rather lovely too, isn't it? But I've never seen it on. Have you, Stevie? Perhaps it's not being maintained, or
I don't know. I don't come up this way.
no?
Much in the evenings, unless we get to a Chinese takeaway, which we've just passed. The hill is important as well because originally they pulled the cloth up by sleigh,
Did they?
and if we come
Wow.
this way,
They pulled the cloth up by sleigh. That's
yes,
amazing,
with
isn't it?
horses, and there's still a little bit of the
Oh,
rail.
there's the rail. Wow, wow, wow. You see, so good to have Stevie here because I wouldn't have known about that at all. You see that rail? There it is, right there. So the sleighs were on that rail.
Yes, pulled by horses, of
Pulled
course,
by
or
horses.
men, or men.
Or men, or both.
We're just entering St. Peter Street,
Yeah,
which is a lovely road.
yep.
The arms of we've got so many buildings here.
We do. I was thinking of the school as probably
Yes.
the one I was wanting you to comment on because it's
That
up.
was a church,
That was a church.
or chapel actually,
Yeah,
or the Oak Room now.
that's right.
Beautiful building. And then we come next door to the Chilcot School.
This is the Chilcot
Look
School.
at that door.
Isn't that amazing?
There's a big room behind the door. Well, there's a passageway actually behind the door, and
Okay.
that leads to a house, which was the school teacher's house, the schoolmaster, as they were called. And in this building, they had the school.
Now I can't read that inscription above the door. Can you?
Yes.
It-
Robert something Chilcot, born in this town, founded this free English school and indebted it with maintenance forever.
Wow.
1611. So this town
1611,
had
eh?
all these schools, and there's
Yeah.
other schools.
Education's such a big theme
Yes.
here. I was saying in my introduction that it's about Tiverton's about flood,
Absolutely.
about fire,
Yes.
about innovation,
Yes.
about industry
Yes.
and education.
Yes.
Let's pop across the other side so we can see this other building, which is slightly later, isn't
The
it?
Great House.
The Great House
Yes. Of St. George.
of St George. Again, it's got a blue plaque.
Yes.
And this,
Fortunately, it's empty at the moment.
okay.
And next to it, you see the three almshouses.
Oh,
which
they're
you see-
almshouses.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you can see those. They're lovely too. And this, there was a building here before this one, wasn't there? This one was the one before was burnt down, wasn't it? And didn't the owner lose his daughter in the fire or something?
Yes. He was a wealthy clothier, wool merchant and benefactor of Tiverton. he replaced his home, which was destroyed by fire in 1598.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
it was built again a fire.
Fire again, yeah. And I mean,
his daughter, Eleanor,
yeah,
was killed.
she was killed. Again, you know, when you look at these buildings, how substantial they are, you can tell how much wealth there was, can you?
Yes.
Shall we walk back down now to towards the river Exe? So that was Chilcot School and the great
Lamp.
lovely lamp.
Yeah.
Yes,
But we'll leave these things for you to find.
indeed.
You have to wear your walking shoes when you walk around Tiverton.
So we're heading down Angel Hill now,
Yes.
and we're coming to the mighty Exe, which runs all the way down the Exe Valley to Exeter and then down to Exmouth.
Yes. And out into the sea at Topsham.
And out into the sea at Shopsham, which I'm going to get down and do a walk down there at some point. Yes.
So much history.
Again,
there.
a lot of history in Topsham.
Yes, but you have to remember the Tiverton merchants were connected with the Topsham because they sent their wool.
There, I didn't know that. That's a little pan of the
This is
river.
beautiful, and fortunately you can't walk up it.
You can't walk. I've often thought that. Would it be nice if there was a riverside walk up there?
The parish church,
Yes.
standing very proudly.
And we're
Also-
heading towards Heathcote's factory over there. And but you can walk a little bit down this side, can't you?
Yes. This bridge was replaced in the early 60s with the last flood when they built the flood defences.
Yes, they did a lot to stop the town
Because-
flooding.
Apparently on the right hand side it used to flood.
This
right-
is called West Exe,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah. So we've got a bit more history here to give you with this panel. Stevie's going to take us through that.
John, he talks about John Heathcote on his arrival, harnessed the natural force of the River Exe.
They actually built a water
Yes,
wheel,
water
right?
Wheel, yes.
That's amazing. There it is at the bottom of the panel there. Can you see it?
Oh yes, I can
Yeah.
see it there.
10 horsepower. That's amazing, isn't
Yes.
it? Weighed
10 horsepower.
80 tons
Yes. And it gave an immediate boost
to the power of the mills.
Yes. And it was in use till 1897.
Yeah. So quite late.
The one's being scrapped in 1911.
Yeah. Yeah.
It would be wonderful if it was still there.
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it just? And so much flooding and so many fires.
Yes. And the river used to freeze over,
The river used to freeze over.
yes, every year, and people would skate on it.
Yeah. Yeah.
At Christmas time, the museum sell authentic Christmas cards of different parts of the town,
Yes.
in different periods, and they're beautiful.
They're beautiful. So this
And you can see the
you can see the floodwaters there, can't you? Yeah.
That's 1960.
That's 1960. My goodness.
And look at that.
Yeah.
But again, you can read up there. There's so much information on these boards.
It's the town was very dependent on its water source for industry. That's for sure. So we're going to actually go around the corner now, and we're going to go towards Heathcote's factory,
Yes.
which is John Heathcote's such an important figure in Tiverton's history, isn't it?
Yes. John Heathcote came to Tiverton in 1816.
1816.
There's a bit of dispute about whether he came down here before the Luddites destroyed his factory in Loughborough.
Did you say the Luddites?
The Luddites.
Did they? Why did they do that?
Well, I'd better explain what Luddites is.
A Luddite, yes.
Because so many visitors don't so know what Luddites were. They were trade unions.
Trade unions.
Yeah, in a way. Because,
Quite militant trade unions.
They were quite, well, they weren't to start with. They weren't to start with, but they got increasingly violent, and they destroyed 20 of John Heathcote's bobbinet.
Yes, because he invented this device which saved a huge amount of labour, right? So they felt this was a threat to their jobs, presumably.
He invented it. He started inventing age 16.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And he produced the bobbinet. Other people had tried to create it, but it was always a missing link.
Yes.
And John Heathcote.
Now I'm gonna cut Stevie off for a moment because it's part of my appreciation of Stevie. There she is. I'm going to buy her a cake. Now, this lady. Anybody home? Hey, you're on camera.
Oh, am I? Hello.
Yeah.
Hi.
Did you have your jab this morning?
I have. Very excited.
Okay. Got a sore arm? Now,
Paracetamol. I've had a cup of tea.
this is Stevie, who's on the walk with me, who has got amazing local knowledge. But I wanted to just acknowledge you because you've had to completely reorganise your business with the lockdown. You come up with a great idea to keep everybody safe.
Absolutely.
Her cakes are amazing. I'm just going to take a picture of her window.
Your window here.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask Stevie to pick something out she'd like for her tea later.
A Belgian bun.
She wants a Belgian bun.
And look at this window. Sarah changes it regularly.
Yeah.
So do visit her when you
Absolutely.
come to
She
Tiverton.
says, once upon a time, there was a girl who really wanted to open a bakery, and it was me. The end. That's so nice. And can you get one for me as well on a separate bag? Sorry. When did you start this, Sarah? Business?
I opened the business 9 years ago.
9 years ago.
It was already a bakery before.
Was it?
But they did a lot of buying in stuff. So
Yeah.
we do more of home baking.
Yeah, yeah.
And absolutely adore it.
Yeah, well, you're such an important service for this part of Tiverton, aren't you? And there's the money there.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
It won't be a sec. Thank you. Stevie, would you like to pick up the buns? Pick up your buns. Thanks, Sarah. Take care.
Enjoy your walk.
This was rebuilt in the early 60s again, because it must have been beautiful with the old buildings.
Yes.
in West Ex.
Yes, indeed. So this was the new factory is built in the 1960s, you say?
Well, it was here.
It was here, yeah.
In this 6-story building here in 1816.
1816. And we've got another panel here that starts to tell the story about Heathcote's. So again, Stevie's going to take us through that.
The wool and cloth trade in Tiverton was getting to a deep decline because of the population and choosing to other materials, really. So it was in deep decline. And the factory was built here in 1792
Wow.
by a clothier.
Clothier.
And it closed in 1814. Well, John Heathcote kept his ear to the ground,
Yes.
and he came and bought it to produce his lace. You have to remember he designed all his own his own machinery.
Unbelievable. What a entrepreneur he was, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He brought prosperity to the town because he was made an MP.
Yes.
And Tiverton at that time was a rotten borough, which means it didn't have an MP.
Okay. A rotten borough.
Yes, a rotten borough.
Right.
Yes, it's interesting, the wording. He became the prominent employer here.
Yes.
And retained this position until the late 1960s.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
His grandson, which was different at all. His grandson took it over.
And he invented this bobbin net machine.
Yes, I must get back to that.
And
he invented the bobbinet
machine, okay.
Which replaced 20 workers.
Aha.
So
that's why the Luddites burnt down his factories. Yeah.
They didn't burn it down. They destroyed 20 machines.
Machines. Okay. Okay.
So, sorry, I think it's 50 machines.
Okay.
Which employed 20.
Yeah.
Replaced 20 people.
I mean,
he installed 300.
300 machines, and he employed 1,500 people.
Yes.
That's huge, isn't it?
By 1822,
yeah,
he employed 1,500 people.
Yeah.
Imagine the joy of Tiverton that he'd come here and settled here.
And the wealth and the prosperity brought to the town.
Yes. You have to remember also that he told his employers in Loughborough if they were willing to come to him in Tiverton.
Yes.
Where was Tiverton?
Yes.
You know, from Leicestershire
the end
to
of
Devon.
the end of the earth.
And he would look after them if they came, and they walked. Most of them walked 200 miles to work for him.
To come down here, they walked 200 miles.
The walkers.
Wow.
In 1816. And 2 ladies from the museum walked the route in 2016.
Did they really?
And he promised them he would look after them. So originally he housed them in what is Heathcote Square now.
Yes.
It was a different name where the weavers would have been.
Yes.
And then he built the houses in the crescents up the road.
I wonder how many people would walk 200 miles for their employers these days.
Well, exactly. But to walk 200 miles, I always imagine the wife, because a lot of the machinists were women,
yes,
or were men, not women. Your man coming home and saying, "Oh, we're going to Tiverton. John Heathcote wants us."
And by the way, there won't be a bus. We've got to walk.
And the children had to walk.
Did they?
They would share a hand cart,
yes,
I'm sure, and they used the canals. Don't forget.
Well, yes.
By 1816, there was a lot of canals.
Canals, yes. Well, we'll be doing the Great Western Canal at some point. Yes. Well, lovely. So let's move around now and see the modern factory. But there is something still of the heritage of John Heathcote here, even now when we look to the right, and we can see the school.
1844.
1844.
But you have to remember that John Heathcote didn't want just machinists. He wanted machinists, designers, accountants, secretaries. So he created a school to educate his employers' children.
Amazing. Into different skills that he could use.
The gentry didn't want the working class to be able to read and write.
No.
So to put a school there so the women could go into the factories,
yes,
as well as the men.
It's so forward thinking, wasn't it? That's what wander round to the front.
Remember, John Heathcote wasn't a Quaker, but he lots of the Quaker
he had a lot of the Quaker ethos. That's right. And you
We're
can.
now standing in front of the retail shop, which is actually the school.
Which is actually the original school, yes.
1841.
1841.
And if you look at the bus stop,
Yes.
which used to bring the people into work.
Oh, that's actually the same kind of age, is it? The bus stop? No. She's pulling my leg.
And we have the lead.
We have the leat here. Now,
Was the power for the water panel.
this supplied the power, yeah. Yeah. And that street over there is called Leat Street.
Yes.
I want to just pop up a little bit further around because back to the school, because up here I noticed the other day we look at above this lovely tall window here.
Yes.
We've actually got JH, John Heathcote. Yeah. Well, we can zoom in on that. JH, John Heathcote, and there's that lovely kind of cloth logo,
Yes.
which is really lovely, isn't it? The lace.
The lace.
That's
You
lace.
have to remember it.
It's lace.
Lace.
He was a lace maker, yeah.
He was a lace maker.
And just look at that, those lovely windows.
And while we're here, we can't forget what's happened for Tiverton. It's on the map. When you think that Heathcote Fabrics won the contract to design and produce the material for the latest Mars exploration, the Perseverance.
The Perseverance
When he went-
lander,
When it landed,
the parachute.
I bet people here were gritting their teeth to see if it worked.
Yeah.
But we won, the factory in Tiverton won the contract.
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it?
That's amazing.
It's astonishing, and so we go back to 1600, and
well,
John Heathcote
well,
was 1800, and he
yes.
started it all.
He would have been so proud,
He would have been so proud.
more proud than Knightshays,
Yes.
because his grandson built that.
Yes.
But he was so proud that the factory is A, still working,
Yes.
and B, keeping up with modern trends.
Trends.
He kept,
Well,
the
what-
whole point was the survival of the factory is because they've moved with the times.
They moved with the times, and when you think our textile industry was disappeared and went out to the Far East,
Absolutely.
and they've managed to survive
They've
because
had to
they've
keep
adapted
changing.
and keep changing.
Yes.
And
You can see some of the end of, or the 1860s, 70s machinery in the museum.
in the museum. It's a fantastic story, isn't it? And it's a story of industrial heritage that rivals the northern cities more
Absolutely.
than rivals
because
them.
it was the weaving first, and then followed on by John Heathcote
Yes.
coming and saving the town.
Yes.
He's a major employer still.
Yes,
But he had factories all over the world.
he did.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
So he was one of our premier industrialists, really,
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
he? No question. We think about Brunel and people like that,
Oh, yes.
and everybody thinks about Brunel, but nobody talks about John Heathcote,
No.
do they?
No, but you have to remember Mark Brunel,
Yes.
who was Isambard's
Father.
wrote a letter to John Heathcote praising him for his bobbinet.
Marvellous. Isn't that a lovely link? There we go. We didn't even script that, did we? Right. Well, we're going to go now to the sort of highlight of the walk, really, because we're going to go to Stevie's house. But it's no ordinary house.
Well, you're not even all invited in, I would have to say.
Absolutely not. I do have a couple of international subscribers now, Stevie. Two friends of mine in Canada, because I lived in Canada for 11 years, and so I think they'll enjoy the reference to them. Hello, Mercedes, and hello, Alison.
Oh, Mercedes.
They'll be watching. Yes.
Is that not a car?
Well, She'll explain that to you, I expect, at some point. Here we go. So this is
in Westex North.
This is Westex North.
Usually go the road. It's Westex South. We have another church down here, which was built for the workers.
Built for the workers.
The Amories gave the land. I'm going to stop you here, Phil.
Okay.
Put your hand under
Underneath. Yeah. What am I supposed to find?
nothing.
Nothing.
Yes. They were built by John Heathcote.
What, these sills? Where are they? Well, they've stood the good test of time, haven't they? We've got.
So when you walk round Tiverton, there's lots of these lovely old.
We've got a cat looking at us at the same time. Okay.
The race. John Heathcote didn't like pubs and drinking or gambling.
He didn't like pubs, drinking and gambling. Okay.
But they were allowed to do a horse race on the table once a year
Were they?
in the racehorse.
In the racehorse. So that's quite an old pub then. That's an
Yeah.
old building as well.
And if you step over the road, that was Heathcote's social club.
That was a social club. Okay. Lovely. Nice building. Plenty of space for entertainment
Yes.
and dancing and
Oh yes, there's
whatever.
still dancing and things
Yeah.
in there, but there's Westex Sports
Westex
and
Sports and
Social.
Social Club.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Wellbrook Street,
Okay.
which again would have been flooded
Yeah.
earlier in.
And these streets would have been cobbled at some
Oh,
point, wouldn't they?
yes.
All been cobbled, wouldn't they?
Yes.
So we're now getting up to Stevie's house, which is
It's a flat actually.
it's a flat. That's okay.
Now, but we're coming up to another.
Another panel. Let's have a look at
Panel.
that.
And of course, Westex and the wool trade, it says,
Yes.
in the mid 14th century. So that was 1300 and something.
13th, 14th century.
Yes, and developed during the
15th
15th century, which was the 1400s. And Tiverton became an early industrial town. Wool was woven into the famous Tiverton kersey. It's actually Devon kersey.
Kersey. What
Kersey.
kersey? What does that mean then? It was
It's
like
the-
a certain kind of weave, was it?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was unfashionable to start with, but they were always changing their fashions, and so it became a very popular. That's why the industry grew,
Grew so fast.
and that's why, the merchants wanted to trade out of London,
Yeah.
because if they belonged to the guild,
Yeah.
they could ship out of London. Westex weavers and spinners supplied cloth to half the 50
50
fulling
mills.
which was combed, wasn't it? It's a bit like the berry material. When you think of your berries.
Oh,
and
berries.
things.
Yeah,
Yes.
like a felt.
Yes, it's like a felt.
Like a felt. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
Which lined the banks of the Exe because we had the rivers.
Had
here.
the water here for the
Yes.
processing. Yeah.
Yes. And the farms provided
Farms.
the sheep,
Yeah.
and the sheep roamed over
Yeah.
this part of the
Yeah.
world,
The Exe Valley
especially
Hills.
Devon,
Yeah.
and Dartmoor.
So all the raw materials you needed
Yes,
were basically here, weren't they?
absolutely,
Yeah.
The land behind the mills and dwellings became rake fields to dry the cloth,
Okay.
and they could bleach the cloth as well.
So they'd have it on
They would
racks,
have it on,
drying,
or on the grass.
or on the grass even.
Because in Victorian times, the maids used to take the carpets out, didn't they?
Yeah. Yes, they
And
did.
drag them upside down to
Yes.
clean them
They did.
on the dewy grass.
Yes.
Production peaked in the mid-18th century, which was the middle of the 1700s,
Yeah.
as we said. After which more advanced manufacturing developed in the north of England,
Yeah.
so we lost the trade.
We lost the trade down
Yes.
here. Yeah.
Yes, the decline was rapid and final.
Yes.
So the town was suddenly,
Yeah. Decimated, really.
all the merchants had died by then.
Yeah.
And it must have been, wonderful when John. You can't stop the connection between the merchants and John Heathcote.
No, you
can
can't. No, he's stamped on the history of the town, isn't he?
Oh,
In every single
yes.
way.
But the merchants were so important.
Tell us a little bit
So,
about the Weaver's Courts. It says down on the bottom left-hand side here.
it explains that in 1612 a devastating
Fire again. Yeah.
started from a furnace near Exbridge,
Okay.
destroyed the town,
Yeah.
the second such disaster in 14 years.
Yeah.
Imagine what it was like.
How that hit the town, to be hit
Yes.
twice in 14
Yes,
years with.
to destroy the town. But you have to remember that how the houses were built
Yes.
and the shops were built, and
Yes.
the thatched cottages,
Thatched, yeah.
and everybody had open fires.
Open fires, exactly.
That's why we had guard dogs
Yeah.
around the fire, didn't
Yes.
we? The guards
Yes,
were to stop
that's right.
things falling out. The citizens rebuilt the town and successfully appealed to King James I,
James I.
James VI of Scotland, James I
First.
of England,
Okay.
who reigned after Charles II, for a charter of incorporation giving the town royal status.
Wow.
So that's when it became a borough.
A borough. Yeah.
It's not talked about now, but if you go along the road from Barnstable, the old road, you'll see the Tiverton
Borough.
when it starts south of West Widley.
Okay.
Widley. This was stone cottages were built around the old cobbled weavers' courtyards. As many as 30 survived into the 20th century.
Okay.
Yes.
Quite difficult working conditions
Yes.
then, really. Yeah.
When the kersey industry was at its
Height.
each
Cottage.
had probably 2 spinning wheels.
Wow. So they were doing all the
Oh,
spinning
it was
in their
cottage,
houses.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cottage, it was a cottage industry.
Yes,
wasn't
of
it?
course.
While the families of the courtyard provided cloth for the specific fulling mill, because your family would weave it for a certain mill.
It's like piecework, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they got paid
50,
per
yes.
length or something,
Oh, yes,
would they?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing.
And when you think we don't like the dark nights in the winter, imagine what a short day they would have to produce cloth in those days.
Absolutely.
Because they couldn't weave
By candlelight. No.
The
No.
women went blind
Trying to do that. Wow. And that brings us on to the John Waldron almshouses,
Yes.
which is where you live, right next here.
Absolutely. It's an interesting building.
Shall we have a look at it?
Because, John Waldron, if we cross her down, John Waldron was another merchant, and again he wanted to give something to the town, so he built 8 almshouses for the poor
For
men
the poor.
of the town. And behind it would have been the market garden where the men would have worked to provide
To grow vegetables
yes,
and
to be sold.
yeah.
And interesting is the chapel.
It's the chapel on the end.
And if we look at the bell on the top, the bell was from a foundry in Germany,
From a foundry in Germany, yeah.
from Cleves,
From Cleves.
Anne of Cleves.
Anne of Cleves, my goodness.
And they think that John brought it back from one of his overseas trips. It was founded in 1539, and this building was built in 1579. So they think he bought it on one of his travels. So I laugh because I think it's second hand. Just going.
Giving directions there, so I will move on for a moment. We'll get another look at this chapel. Anything can happen. Anything.
If we look above the chapel,
Okay.
we can see his initials. I don't know why it's I for John.
Okay, let me see if I
John
can get
Waldron.
in to see that. Okay, yeah, and now this is the plaque that I find
Yes.
absolutely fascinating. And this is how we met, wasn't it?
Yes.
Um,
Since youth and life doth pass away, and death at hand to end our days, let us do so that man may say, we spent our goods, God, to praise God. He that upon the poor doth spend the goods that he hath here, to God again the same doth send, and pay the same with a great increase. On the ground floor, the lentils right through there.
Yeah.
We can go. Depart thy goods while thou hast
As
time,
time
for after
after
thy
thy death
they are not thine.
God.
God
Save
save
Queen Elizabeth.
the First.
This is Queen Elizabeth I.
Imagine
1579.
Yeah. Queen Elizabeth I was on the throne there.
Unbelievable. It
And
is
it's
unbelievable.
still here. It's beautiful. It shows.
And this is the kind of cobble we would see. We would have
yes,
seen
it would have been
on the roads and the streets. Yeah.
And when you look at the goods across the top, there's barrels
Oh yeah, barrels.
and there's an elephant. Did he import some?
There's an elephant up there. So there is.
He import some ivory?
I wonder.
But
Yeah,
when
so
you
we've
look
got-
round the
We've got elephants, and we've got what else is up there? Barrels, elephants,
and keys there.
and keys. Yeah.
Beautiful shot of the bell.
Let's get a shot of that bell. Yeah, indeed. And that's been there up there since, well,
1579.
1579.
But it was made in 1539.
It was made
in
in-
Cleves.
made in Cleves, 1539.
It's the oldest bell in Devon.
It's the oldest bell in Devon. Does it still?
Yes,
go?
it still rings because
Yeah.
we used to have a service in there till 2 years ago, and it was rung every Sunday at 3 o'clock.
Wow. That's gorgeous, isn't it? And I presume that window would have been stained glass at some point. Would it?
Probably not.
Probably not, no.
Because it was for the men again
Yeah.
to praise John. Waldron and his wife, because he died, John Waldron died when the almshouses were being built, and in that period women had power, so his wife completed them.
Wow.
It was only the Victorians that took the power away
Yeah.
from the
Women had the power. Yeah. Well, Queen Elizabeth I, eh?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes, she did, but there was a lot of men thinking that she should marry, and
Well, of course, she defied a lot of them, didn't she?
absolutely, and she reigned for so long.
Yeah, she did, and she was a good queen, wasn't she?
Oh,
Yeah.
a lot of the Armada and
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
history. She was her father's daughter, wasn't she? And her mother's daughter.
Yeah.
Definitely. Anne Boleyn suffered.
So we've got one more little mystery, a little treat to look at before we finish this walk. Shall we do that next?
Yes.
Okay. Follow on. I'll follow you
Where are we going?
to the workers. Yeah. Okay.
Cross the road and just go up John Street. I'm sure that the house there was a shop at one time.
It probably was, judging by the window. So many of the little
Yes.
little community shops have closed, unfortunately.
Yes. It was probably an early shop.
Yeah. Now then, we're going down here.
Renamed Heathcote Square.
Heathcote Square. Okay.
These were the weavers' cottages.
These were weavers' cottages. Now they're, see, I wouldn't describe them as a cottage, would you? Because they're
No.
really quite big, aren't they?
But several families lived in a cottage, when you think of it.
Okay. So would they? So their workshop would be
at the top.
at the top, would it?
Yes. For
So they're-
light.
For the light.
Mm,
So they live down the bottom,
yes.
or the bottom and the second floor.
There was probably people living in each room.
Each room,
Yes, and with the kitchen. Look at the East End of London.
of course, yeah.
This was
Yeah.
before then.
And were these the same?
Yes.
They're all,
So when they first came to Tiverton.
and these were all built by John Heathcote, were they?
No.
No?
They would,
I'm getting out of
you're
touch.
getting out of touch because it were the weavers were
Weavers
here.
were here
For the cloth industry.
for the cloth industry. Yeah, there's an overlap here, isn't there, between industries?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, because there's, it's just died out, hasn't it? It's
Yeah.
declined.
Yes.
The cloth industry.
Yes.
It's disappeared up the north.
Yes.
Of
Correct.
The country, because you know,
You got me back on track again now, Stevie, with the history.
and these cottages would probably empty
Yes.
because John Heathcote promised his workers that he would look after them, so
Yes.
they were housed here, probably again to one family a room, which was all they left probably.
Yeah.
And look at the atmosphere here, and look at the spaces here.
There would have been a great community, wouldn't there?
Absolutely.
Because they all
Then-
knew each other. They all worked
Yeah,
together.
Of course they did.
Yeah.
And he wanted his experienced machinist
Yeah.
to teach the people of the town,
Of course.
who'd been involved in the cloth industry, which
Yeah.
was a cottage industry and so different.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, you
Indeed.
have to think 1816 was after the Battle of Trafalgar. It was the Duke of Wellington, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At the time, so the Napoleonic
Yes. Yeah.
So
Massive change.
massive change, and
We think about change now, but there was,
always massive.
yeah,
You s-
social, economic, industrial,
Yes.
everything was
Well,
changing.
you remember the Enclosure Acts with
Yes.
the farms, and
Yeah.
so many people came from the country
Yeah.
into the towns.
Yes, they did.
because they lost
They lost their
their
lands. Yeah.
livelihood. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they lived here while he built the houses which they now are living.
Yeah.
And these are painted grey
Would they have been?
because they're John. They were.
That was his colours. Okay. They would have had exposed brickwork though
Oh, yes,
originally, would
yes, I would have thought so.
they?
I don't think there's any photographs of the
No.
original.
No.
But it was very quiet here.
Yeah. Yeah, you
away
would.
from the traffic.
You wouldn't know
You wouldn't
these
know
houses
they
were
were
here, would you?
here.
No.
And there's another. The access led them straight through. They would come out early in the
Socialise in
morning
the.
for first shift,
Yes.
and they'd walk together
Yes.
to the factory. They would have gardens to produce their own produce.
Yes, they would probably
Because they
cultivated
probably-
all of this into gardens, wouldn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we didn't use them as leisure in those days.
No, they were.
You know,
The land was used
there was,
to
yeah,
produce.
land was well used to produce. So they would be all talking as they worked, and then we'd walk down.
And that brings us back out
To the factory.
to the factory, which is literally just across the road. Yeah. So they had no transport problems. They
No.
were right next to where they were employed.
And they had shops,
Yeah.
small shops here. There's lots of shops, and they walked into work.
And there we have Heathcote Fabrics
Yes.
and the main factory. Well, I think that's a good point for us to finish, and for me to thank you very much for accompanying me on the tour, Stevie. It's been absolutely amazing,
and I'm looking forward
and
to going back.
enjoy your bun a bit later, and